faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today I'll interpret the book 500 Years of Haedong for you. The book Rise and Fall of the Joseon Dynasty is authored by Ding Chen, a Korean history researcher and postdoctoral fellow at Fudan University's Institute of Literature and History. Fans of K-dramas know Koreans love historical shows, many set in the Joseon period, commonly called the Yi Dynasty. In 2003, the hit Asian drama Jewel in the Palace featured heroine Han Sang-gun living under King Yongsan's rule. The 2019 hit series Kingdom is set in early 17th century. Back then, Joseon faced constant turmoil and misery. Perfect for dramatic plots, many historical dramas hit the big screen, like The Fortress, Nam Hansen Sung, and recent box office champ, The Book of Fish, focusing on scholars' choices amid late Joseon upheavals. This popularity shows Koreans' passion for that history. Actually, not just Koreans, we Chinese also have deep interest in the Yi Dynasty, long seen as a core part of the Confucian cultural sphere. Korean life, from literature and food to etiquette and philosophy, still bears Confucian imprints established during the Yi Dynasty. Interestingly, the Yi Dynasty lasted 518 years, 1392 to 1910, overlapping China's Ming and Qing dynasties. This subtly reflects its rise and fall, closely tied to East Asia's shifting tides. What exactly unfolded? How did the Yi Dynasty become a Confucian state and respond to 19th century external shocks? Today's book, 500 Years of Haedong, will reveal this complex history. My breakdown has 4 parts. First, founding the dynasty amid East Asia's changes. Second, transforming customs, Korea's Confucianization. Third, pivotal choices, from Ming loyalty to Qing submission. Fourth, decline through factional strife, internal decay, and Japanese invasion. All right, let's begin part 1. Founding the dynasty amid East Asia's transformations. In the year 1368, a major event happened in East Asia. Emperor Taizu of Ming, Zhu Yuanzhang, declared himself emperor and founded the Ming dynasty in Nanjing. After that, the Ming army marched north and captured the Yuan dynasty's capital, Dadu. Emperor Shun of Yuan fled north in panic, returning to the Mongolian plateau and establishing the Northern Yuan regime. Thus, the Ming dynasty basically achieved its goal of expelling the Mongols and restoring the Central Plains. After the northern expedition succeeded, Zhu Yuanzhang sent envoys to the Korean Peninsula to announce that the Great Ming had replaced the Yuan dynasty. At that time, Korea was under the rule of the Goryeo Dynasty. This dynasty unified the Korean Peninsula in 936 AD and lasted over 430 years. Its survival philosophy was, whoever's strongest on the East Asian continent, submit to them. So, historically, Goryeo paid tribute successively to the Northern Song, Liao Kingdom, Jin Kingdom, Yuan Dynasty, and others. Now, with the rise of the Ming Dynasty, King Gongmin of Goryeo immediately expressed willingness to pay tribute to Ming and changed the era name from Yuan's Jiuwan to Ming's Hongwu. This statement received Zhu Yuanzhang's approval. He immediately infeft King Gongmin as the King of Goryeo, signifying that Goryeo had officially become a vassal state of Ming. Everything seemed smooth, but things weren't that simple. Actually, the Goryeo royal family had long intermarried with the Yuan imperial family. King Gongmin's principal wife was Princess Noguk of Yuan. So, her connections with the Mongols were tight, and even after submitting to Ming, they remained intertwined like unbroken threads. For instance, in 1373, King Gongmin secretly met with Northern Yuan envoys to discuss tribute matters. After King Gongmin's death, Goryeo split into 2 factions internally, the pro-Yuan faction advocating allegiance to Northern Yuan, and the pro-Ming faction advocating dependence on Ming. So, the new king, King Yu, devised a compromise, accepting both Ming's and Northern Yuan's enfeoffments. His plan was, if Ming solidified its hold, great. If the Mongols returned, he could maneuver. is the classic strategy for a small country squeezed between big powers. The plan was sound, but pulling it off depended on political wisdom. As it turned out, King Yu lacked that wisdom. In 1388, Zhu Yuanzhang established the Tiling Guard Commandery, formally incorporating Liaodong into Ming territory. This move greatly displeased King Yu. Originally, the Yuan dynasty had set up administrative bodies in the northeast Korean Peninsula for direct rule until late Yuan chaos allowed Goryeo to reclaim it. Then Goryeo dreamed of taking all Liaodong, but Ming's guard shattered that illusion. Unwilling to back down, King Yu ordered the occupation of Liaodong, and this heavy task fell to the famous Goryeo general Yi Seong-gye. Yi Seong-gye came from a military family, fought valiantly for Goryeo all over, racking up major victories. Reclaiming the northeast peninsula was partly his doing. The battle-hardened Yi Seong-gye knew Goryeo couldn't beat Ming. It was an impossible mission, so he opposed the attack, but the king stubbornly insisted, promoting Yi and forcing him to lead 50,000 troops. After crossing the Yalu River, soldiers deserted constantly. Clearly, no one wanted to die. Seeing this, Yi Seong-gye gathered his generals and said, "The king's listening to slander and insists on attacking Ming. The fallout will be disastrous. Right now, the only way is to root out the traitors and save the nation." The whole army responded enthusiastically. So, Yi Seong-gye turned his forces around, charging toward Goryeo's capital Kaesong under the banner of cleansing the court of corrupt officials, forcing King Wu to step down and putting a puppet in power. Just like that, the plan to occupy Liaodong was totally crushed. Plus, for over 500 years after, the Korean Peninsula saw no more expansionist trends. Yi Seong-gye, with his big win in cleansing the court, became a powerful minister. By 1392, he cleared all hurdles, deposed the puppet, and took the throne. He named the new dynasty Joseon, the Joseon Dynasty, commonly called the Yi Dynasty.
Thus it was born.
The term Joseon originated in China, meaning morning sun, east rising, dawn light, and bright freshness. Books like Guanzi, Records of the Grand Historian, and Book of Han used Joseon for today's Korean Peninsula. Yi Seong-gye picked this word from Chinese classics to name the new dynasty, clearly showing goodwill toward Ming. He also sent envoys to Zhu Yuanzhang to explain everything, pledging his unwavering loyalty to Ming, no second thoughts. So what was Zhu Yuanzhang's take? In a nutshell, acknowledge the facts while keeping a cold eye on things. On one hand, replacing the pro-northern Yuan Goryeo Dynasty helped stabilize Ming's northeastern border, so Zhu Yuanzhang greenlit Yi Seong-gye's name change request right away. And he stated, "As long as Joseon truly submits and doesn't stir up trouble, it'll be a blessing for both peoples." On the other hand, Zhu Yuanzhang didn't publicize Joseon's voluntary submission. First, he needed to watch Yi Seong-gye's actions. More importantly, by Confucian tradition, Yi's move was usurpation. If he made a big fuss praising it, it'd encourage rebellion, and Zhu Yuanzhang wasn't having that. So even though Yi Seong-gye set Joseon up as a Ming vassal state, relations stayed lukewarm overall. Zhu Yuanzhang often nitpicked and criticized Yi Seong-gye to remind Joseon not to drift away from Ming ties. Things only warmed up with the next generation in 1398 when Yi Seong-gye abdicated and his second son, Yi Bang-gwa, took over. 2 years later, he was overthrown by Yi Seong-gye's fifth son, Yi Bang-won, who moved the capital to Hanyang after ascending the throne. That's Seoul today. As a usurper, Yi Bang-won desperately needed Ming's recognition to boost his legitimacy. Then luck struck. While Yi Bang-won was scheming for the Joseon throne, Ming itself was embroiled in a brutal power struggle over the top spot. In 1399, Prince Yan Zudi launched the Jingnan campaign, captured Nanjing in 1392, deposed the Jianwen emperor, and crowned himself emperor, becoming the Yongle emperor. When young, as a Joseon envoy to Ming, he met Prince Yang Zudi. During the Jingnan campaign, the Jian Wen emperor asked Joseon for troops, but Yi Bangwan held his forces back. After the Yongle emperor took the throne, Yi Bangwan was first to send envoys with congratulations. All this won Yonglei's favor, and as fellow usurpers, they felt a mutual sympathy. So the Yongle emperor was way friendlier to Joseon than Zhu Yuanzhang had been. He formally enfoffed Yi Bangwan as king of Joseon and bestowed lavish gifts like gold seals, crowns, and jade pendants. Yi Bangwan sent 4 or 5 tribute missions to Ming every year, acting all devoted. Of course, Joseon kept strong independence. Ming rarely interfered internally and even overlooked clear oversteps, most notably with temple names.
By Confucian rites, only emperors get temple names after death.
The king of Joseon, ranked just as a Ming vassal king, should have gotten simple posthumous titles like King So-and-so. But Joseon didn't follow strictly. After Yi Seong-gye died, he was given a temple name. Yi Bangwan's temple name was Taejong, and this set the pattern. Out of 27 Joseon kings, 25 had temple names. Ming officials just turned a blind eye. As long as you bow down and pay tribute on time, I'll pretend not to know. Actually, flip it around. Temple names are a Confucian cultural thing. So, Joseon kings' obsession with temple names shows how deeply they were steeped in Confucian culture. Part 2. Changing customs, Joseon's Confucianization. I'll explain how Confucian culture seeped into every corner of Joseon. Because of geographical proximity, the Korean Peninsula has always maintained close ties with the East Asian continent. In the 7th century, Koreans invented the Idu system, which either borrowed the pronunciation of Chinese characters to record Korean words, or directly used Chinese vocabulary for meaning, used in official documents among bureaucrats. Thus, the Idu system, Quia Edu system, the lives of the peninsula's nobility, became deeply intertwined with Chinese characters and Confucian classics. During the Goryeo Dynasty, the court also emulated China by establishing the imperial examination system, which eventually produced great Confucian scholars like Zhang Mongju on the peninsula. Young Meng was born in the southeast of Korea, passed the imperial exam at age 24, and embarked on a career in government. He was well-versed in Confucian classics and was a key figure in introducing Changju Neo-Confucianism to the Korean Peninsula. In his conduct and dealings, Zhang Mengju always adhered to the standards of Changju Neo-Confucianism. When his father passed away, he resigned from office and returned home to observe 3 years of mourning before resuming his position in the court. After the establishment of the Ming Dynasty, Zhang Mengju belonged to the pro-Ming faction and once supported Yi Seong-gye in cleansing the court of corrupt officials. But when he learned that Yi Seong-gye was attempting to usurp the throne, he firmly opposed it based on Confucian loyalty to the ruler, and was tragically killed as a result. It's intriguing that the Joseon Dynasty eliminated Zhang Mengju physically, but did not negate his ideas. After King Gaizhong Yi Bangwan ascended the throne, he posthumously awarded Zhang Mengju numerous titles and enshrined him in the Confucian temple.
Why did he do this?
Because Zhang Mengju's idea of loyalty to the ruler was exactly what the Li Dynasty vigorously promoted, similar to how the Qing rulers executed the anti-Qing general Shi Kefa, but also greatly praised his loyal and patriotic character. In fact, absolute loyalty to the monarch was the main motivation for the Joseon Dynasty to embrace and promote Confucianism. This reached its peak under King Sejong, son of Taejong, who succeeded him. Sejong reigned for 32 years and implemented a series of measures to promote Confucianism.
These measures were mostly formulated and implemented by a specialized institution called Chipyeonjeon. The name means hall for gathering worthies.
Sejong specifically selected 20 young civil officials below the 3rd rank to become Confucian scholars of Yi Seong-gye. These scholars studied Chengzu Neo-Confucianism and Ming institutions, using them as a blueprint. They proposed reform suggestions based on the current state of the Joseon Dynasty, which mainly focused on two aspects.
The first aspect was to perfect ritual laws and suppress Buddhism.
During the reign of King Tayo Yi Seong-gye, Joseon promulgated the Gyeongguk Daejeon as a legal code, but it had many loopholes. Therefore, Sejong ordered the Confucian scholars of Jifyeonjong to supplement it based on the Ming Code and Confucian doctrines, thus implementing Confucian ethics at the legal level. Under King Sejong's direction, the scholars of Jifyeonjong standardized rituals, incorporating the relationship between ruler and subject into Confucian rites, thereby strengthening royal power. King Sejong also used legal means to suppress Buddhism, the state religion during the Goryeo Dynasty. Korean Buddhism, which originally had 12 sects, was reduced to 2, and the lands and servants of temples were nationalized. Reciting Buddhist scriptures was banned in the capital, Hanyang, effectively curbing Buddhism's influence on Joseon society, leading to its decline. Confucianism rose to become the mainstream ideology supported by the rulers. The Joseon literati were already steeped in Confucianism, with many possessing deep knowledge, so they adapted quickly to this change. But how to get ordinary people to embrace Confucianism?
This leads to the second aspect, printing text and creating Hangul to educate the masses. In 1432, Jifyeonjong scholars presented the Samgang Hang Silgo.
The so-called three bonds mean the ruler guides the subjects, the father guides the son, the husband guides the wife. Typical Confucian ethics. Scholars used this as a standard, selecting 110 figures from stories circulating in China and Korea, such as filial sons, loyal ministers, and virtuous women, illustrating their deeds and adding explanations to print into books. These illustrated booklets were, of course, targeted at ordinary people for propaganda. But here's the problem. The word order and pronunciation of Chinese differ greatly from Korean. For example, Chinese grammar is subject-verb-object, while Korean is subject-object-verb. Mastering Chinese requires immense effort, which only nobles could achieve. In other words, the Samgang Hang Sildo, printed in Chinese characters, was incomprehensible to ordinary people. What to do? King Sejong summoned the scholars of Jifyeonjong to create a new writing system. In 1433, the Joseon Dynasty announced 28 Hangul characters, a phonetic writing system that could easily transcribe Chinese texts and matched Korean grammar, making it easy for people to learn. Indeed, the Samgang Hang Sildo printed in Hangul spread quickly, effectively promoting Confucianization among the people, and Hangul became the precursor to modern Korean script. At the same time, Sejong ordered the adoption of movable type printing, facilitating mass printing of books, marking the start of widespread movable type printing in Korea. And Sejong, Confucian classics like the 4 Books and 5 Classics, Zozuan, biographies of virtuous women, and comprehensive mirror for aid in government entered Korean households through movable type printing. So, how effective was all the effort rulers put into promoting Confucianism? It should be said that it transformed customs, greatly changing people's lifestyles. For example, the Korean Peninsula once practiced namguyo dushka marriage customs, where married men lived with their in-laws and children were raised by maternal grandparents. After Chengzu, Neo-Confucianism prevailed. It shifted to Yo-Guyang-ga, women moving to husbands' homes to serve in laws, making mother-in-law conflicts increasingly common. By the mid-late Joseon period, everyone from royalty to commoners faced these issues. Today, many Korean proverbs about in-law tensions originate here, like red bean porridge for daughters, bean sprout soup for daughters-in-law, meaning don't waste good things on outsiders. Mother-in-law relationships remain a central theme in K-dramas. Legally, Joseon women had inheritance rights, though their shares diminished as Confucianization deepened, yet many women still managed household wealth. They were called holders of the storehouse keys. Compared to Ming China, Joseon women held slightly higher status, avoiding complete dependence on men. Yet in some areas, Joseon enforced Chengzu Neo-Confucianism more zealously than Ming, especially among the Yangban literati. Their obsession with primogeniture, what is Yangban? It originated in the Goryeo era. During royal assemblies, civil officials on the east were Dongban, military on the west Seoban, collectively Yangban, meaning court officials. Initially, passing exams could make one Yangban, offering commoners advancement chances, but Joseon restricted exams to Yangban descendants only. Only principal wives' sons could inherit Yangban status. Sons of concubines, even if they passed exams, could only be low-level officials, translators, or doctors. Commoners farmed, paid taxes, and did corvée labor. Exams were impossible dreams. Below them, the low-born were perpetual slaves, butchers, or entertainers with no hope, cementing rigid classes where Yangban monopolized power across generations. The resource-rich Yangban literati then constrained military authority in turn. The power of Joseon kings couldn't compare to Ming or Qing emperors, which they resented. So successive kings expanded military authority by relying on in-laws and eunuchs to weaken Yangban influence or instigate infighting among them. This was a common feudal tactic, helping consolidate royal power but causing factionalism and constant infighting that corrupted the court by mid-Joseon. For instance, during the 40 years from King Sejong to King Sangjong, the merit faction and literati faction clashed fiercely. Under King Seonjo, the literati faction split into Easterners and Westerners who sabotaged each other even during Japanese invasions, ignoring national crises. And so, what became of Joseon's fate? This brings us to Part 3, Pivotal Choices from the Imjin War to Qing submission. While Joseon was mired in factional strife, neighboring Japan entered its warring states period. By 1590, Toyotomi Hideyoshi had largely unified Japan and turned his gaze northward.
Hideyoshi planned to conquer Korea as a springboard for invading China.
So he began preparations. Joseon scouts detected unusual activity across the sea, but would Japan really attack?
Westerners said yes. Easterners said no, both using it as political ammunition while ignoring the actual threat.
After endless debates, they neither prepared defenses nor informed Ming. On April 13, 1592, lunar calendar, Japanese forces landed at Busan. War erupted. Since 1592 was an Imjin year and Japanese were called Waku pirates, this became the Imjin War, Japanese invasion. Unprepared, Joseon troops retreated continuously.
Within weeks, Japanese forces neared Hansong, Seoul. King Seonjo fled in panic. Hansong fell, followed by the ancient capital Pyongyang.
Disparate, Seonjo requested asylum in Ming.
This was equivalent to admitting national collapse. Emperor Wanli rejected the plea and immediately ordered Ming troops into Joseon.
By mid-August, 200,000 plus Ming soldiers turned the tide, winning major victories at Pyongyang and Kaesong, crushing Japanese morale.
A month later, Ming recaptured Hansong, yet the war dragged on 7 years. How? First off, Ming's stance was all over the place. The court knew Korea couldn't be abandoned. It'd be a huge blow to Ming's prestige as the overlord. But war ain't cheap. Plus, in the Wanli era, money was tight. Could the treasury's meager funds last through a long war? Meanwhile, Ming had its own vicious infighting. No matter who was in charge, pro-peace or pro-war, their rivals would always object, making consensus impossible. On the front lines, it meant fighting, then talking, then fighting again, a vicious cycle. When it comes to infighting, Joseon's was way worse, hurting the war effort more. Back then, Joseon's army was no good, but their navy could still fight. Early in the Imjin War, if the navy hadn't fought tooth and nail, Joseon would have been captured easily. But both Navy commanders, Won Jun and Yi Sun-sin, got caught up in the infighting.
The Westerners backed Won Gyun, the Easterners backed Yi Sun-sin, and the rivalry poisoned their bond.
In 1597, the Easterners lost power, so King Seonjo fired Yi Sun-sin and gave Won Gyun full command. But surprise, the Navy got slaughtered, and Won Gyun was killed. The news shocked everyone. Seonjo had to bring Yi Sun-sin back, and he crushed the Japanese fleet at Myeongyang, saving the day. Still, the Westerners kept hounding him, and Ming stayed wishy-washy. Thanks to Joseon's infighting, the war dragged on till September 1598. When Hideyoshi died, the Japanese pulled out, and the Imjin War finally wrapped up. Hideyoshi.com. All right, so what were the war's effects? Look at it from both sides. For Joseon, without Ming's aid, they'd have been wiped out. Joseon's rulers wept with thanks, seeing Ming as their saviors, which tightened bonds with Ming. Changzu Neo-Confucianism became bedrock for the nation, and Ming's military prowess really wowed Joseon. Gunpowder weapons especially blew their minds, so Joseon went all in on guns, even importing Western ones from Portugal and Spain, forming musket squads. Eventually, they outdid Ming in firearms use. As for Ming, the upside was upholding their overlord-vassal setup with Joseon. Meanwhile, after Hideyoshi's death, Japan abandoned expansionism, restoring Korea-Japan relations and preserving East Asia's international order. But the war's negative impacts couldn't be ignored. 7 years of conflict drained Ming's resources, weakening frontier control and creating space for later Jin's rise in Liaodong. Entering the 17th century, Ming found it increasingly hard to suppress them. In 1619, Ming's main forces were annihilated by later Jin at the Battle of Sarhu, losing strategic initiative forever. As later Jin's dominance grew, East Asia's power structure shifted dramatically, forcing Joseon into another pivotal choice. In 1636, later Jin's leader Huan Taiji declared himself emperor, renaming his dynasty Qing, determined to overthrow Ming. Conquering Joseon first became essential to secure his rear. After peaceful demands for submission were rejected, Qing cavalry stormed south toward Hansan by year's end.
Joseon's army suffered repeated defeats. King Injo fled with officials to Namhansan-song fortress southeast of Hansong, where Qing forces besieged them. Injo vowed never to betray Ming. Help!
On lunar December 24th, coinciding with Emperor Chongzhen's birthday, Injo and officials bowed toward Beijing to show loyalty, but loyalty required strength. Joseon troops stood no chance against the Eight-Banner cavalry.
In one sortie, nearly 200 Joseon soldiers died. King casualties?
Just 2. After this, Joseon's army holed up in the fortress, too terrified to fight, but starvation loomed. Deep winter set in, food ran out in Namhansan-song, men and horses froze or starved, defense became impossible. Defeated, Injo accepted Huang Taiji's terms: abolish Ming-era names, adopt Qing-era names, and send royal heirs as hostages. Hostages would ensure Joseon sent envoys to Shenyang for holidays, supported Qing attacks on Ming, and provided troops. On January 30, 1637, Injo donned blue robes, symbolizing vassal status, exited the fortress, and kowtowed 3 times before Huan Taiji. This ended Joseon's vassalage to Ming, making Qing its new overlord. Henceforth, Joseon's court lived in tortured duality, bowing to Qing while longing for Ming. On one hand, they had to pay tribute to Qing on schedule, intermarry with Manchu nobles, and Jose musketeers repeatedly helped Qing troops defeat Ming forces. On the other hand, Joseon's rulers still cherished Ming. How deep was this sentiment? During King Yeongjon's reign, he learned that Emperor Chengzhan had ordered a rescue when Qing besieged Namhansan-song. Sadly, Joseon surrendered too quickly, forcing Ming to abort. This decades-old story made Yeongjo sigh deeply and lose sleep, and this was over a century after Ming's fall. Such was Joseon's lingering affection for Ming. But reality dictated, no matter their longing, they only dared whisper about Ming privately, then dutifully pledged loyalty to Qing. Over time, Joseon-Qing relations quietly evolved. As ties entered a new phase, we reach part 4. Decline. Modern Korea's tragic fate. Joseon's view of Qing shifted from contempt to acceptance. Initially, Joseon saw the Ming-Qing transition through Confucian, civilized versus barbarian lens. They believed Ming represented orthodox Chinese civilization, while Qing were barbarians. Qing replacing Ming meant civilization had fallen to barbarism. Thus, Korea claimed the mantle of Chinese orthodoxy. Joseon called itself Little China, positioning as Confucianism's true heir, outwardly submitting to Qing rulers, inwardly seething with disdain. For example, envoys to Ming were Chasa, heavenly dynasty envoys, implying reverence. After submitting to Qing, they became Yonghen-sa, Beijing envoys, neutral, since Yanjing was Beijing's old name. This detail revealed their differing attitudes toward Ming versus Qing. Yonghengsa envoys often criticized Qing rituals and social customs in reports to the king, basically calling them barbarian behavior.
We looked down on them until Emperor Kangxi changed everything.
During the early revolt of the three feudatories, Joseon officials were thrilled, predicting Qing's collapse. But Kangxi crushed the rebellion, solidifying Qing rule. This made Joseon wonder, maybe Qing truly held the mandate of heaven. How else survive such catastrophe? Kangxi's policies toward Joseon further won hearts. He repeatedly reduced Joseon's tribute quotas to ease burdens and offered aid when needed. In 1697, Korea suffered a famine. Emperor Kangxi sent 30,000 dan of grain, 20,000 sold at fair prices, 10,000 given free, leaving Joseon's court deeply grateful. Perceptions of Qing rulers improved dramatically. Yonhengsa envoys praised Kangxi in records as a wise, benevolent monarch meeting Confucian standards. Kangxi knew of Joseon's Ming nostalgia but didn't scold them, instead praising Korea as a land of rights and model Confucian adherent. This convinced Joseon's court that Kangxi truly embodied a great ruler's inclusive vision. By Kangxi's later reign, Joseon internally accepted Qing. Younger Yangban scholars, unburdened by history, embraced it wholeheartedly. This submission secured prolonged peace. Economically, this paid dividends too. As a vassal, Korea joined Qing's tribute trade system, offering local goods in exchange for lavish imperial gifts and silver. Typically, the gift's value far exceeded the tribute, a special privilege for vassal states. So Joseon missions brought ginseng, seaweed, otter pelts, and Korean ginseng to gain richer returns. Then in Beijing, they buy fine porcelain, luxury silks, pearls, and jade for Korea's elites, fueling extravagance. But tribute trade had quotas. Once met, official channels closed, frustrating Joseon's growing desires. Smuggling boomed, inserting Korea into Qing's East Asian trade network, reaching Japan, Ryukyu, Burma, Vietnam, and Siam, where Korean ginseng thrived. Korean merchants earned piles of silver buying Qing luxuries. Silver gradually became East Asia's trade hard currency. Rapid foreign trade boosted domestic commerce and industry. By mid-18th century, Joseon's commerce flourished, with distinct merchant classes in Hansong, Kaesong, and Pyongyang. Kaesong merchants monopolized Japan trade. Hanseong merchants controlled local distribution networks. The wealthy merchants of the Joseon Dynasty were nothing like merchants in a market economy. Trace it back, and you'll see they had deep connections with the powerful elites. These merchants either got royal monopolies from the Joseon court or were related to the Yangban literati, using their connections for business. In return, they constantly funneled profits back to the royal family and Yangban. So in Joseon, becoming a wealthy merchant had high barriers. Commoners and the lowborn had little chance. In this sense, Joseon's merchants were appendages of political power, their interests tightly bound to the elites, unable to develop independent consciousness like European merchants to challenge authority. This ensured that no matter how prosperous Joseon's commerce got, it couldn't break traditional barriers. While Portugal and Spain colonized globally and Britain's Industrial Revolution raged, Joseon remained a conservative agrarian society. Westerners called it the Hermit Kingdom, seeing it as isolated and mysterious, but rapid global changes made it hard to stay the same.
In the mid-19th century, Western gunboats blasted open Qing China's doors, sounding a wake-up call for Korea too.
In fact, Joseon's rulers knew about Qing's crushing defeats in the Opium Wars, but they doubled down on isolation, banning Western goods and culture.
In 1866, Joseon executed French missionaries and banned Catholicism, provoking a fierce French response.
That fall, 7 French warships with over 600 soldiers sailed to Korea for revenge. They gained ground but were ambushed by Korean troops. As winter set in, they withdrew gloomily.
In 1871, 5 American warships approached Korea demanding trade and were refused.
Though the U.S. won battles in fierce fighting, Korea's rulers stayed defiant. Unprepared for a major war, America pulled out. These victories inflated Korea's confidence. They thought they could keep enemies out and stay isolated. But events unfolded in ways they never expected. Unlike Korea, Japan opened its doors to Western powers, eagerly learned from them, grew stronger, and its ambitions swelled.
Suddenly, calls to conquer Korea grew loud and widespread.
Han originally referred to ancient Korea's 3 tribes, Mahan, Jinhan, and Byeonhan, collectively called Samhan. Later, Han came to mean Korea, so the Saikonran meant conquering Korea, a notion Japan had long harbored. In the 7th and 16th centuries, Japan invaded Korea but got beaten back by Chinese reinforcements, yet never gave up the dream.
After the Meiji Restoration, the Seikonran surged again.
Meiji leaders like Saigo Takamori and Ito Hirobumi championed it. Japan knew Korea intimately and planned meticulously, unlike opportunistic Western powers, preparing conquest in earnest.
Frankly, Korea knew Japan's ambitions but couldn't respond effectively.
Why? Joseon's old curse, power struggles, resurfaced. King Gojong took the throne at 12, but real power lay with the Daeyeongun, Yi Ha-eun, Gojong's biological father. Logically, they should have been close, but the father-son bond lost to power lust. As Gojong matured, he resented his father's control. Conflicts escalated, with Queen Min backing Gojong. The Min clan flooded the court as in-laws, rallying factions against Yi Ha-eun, tangling Joseon politics. Japan exploited this infighting, forcing Korea to sign treaties opening ports and granting extraterritorial rights. This was colonization's first step.
Step 2. Military occupation.
In 1882, a military mutiny erupted. Qing troops entered at Gojong's request, while Japan used protecting citizens as pretext to invade. Afterward, Japan forced a treaty securing troop stationing rights.
Step 3. Expelling Qing the suzerain. In July 1894, Japanese troops stormed Hansong, attacking Qing forces, igniting the First Sino-Japanese War.
As we know, Qing suffered catastrophic defeat, ceding territory and abandoning suzerainty over Korea. Thus, Japan became Korea's de facto protectorate, yet Korea resisted. Under Queen Min's lead, reforms swept military, tax, and judicial systems to build strength. She even reached out to Tsarist Russia to counter Japan, enraging Tokyo. In summer 1995, Japanese Ronin stormed the palace, murdered Queen Min, and aborted the reforms. 2 years later, King Gojong sought to elevate his nation's status, placing it nominally on equal footing with China and Japan. And so he declared himself emperor, renamed the Kingdom of Joseon as the Korean Empire, and posthumously honored Queen Min as Empress Myeongsong. He aimed to boost morale and resist Japanese encroachment, but this move was doomed. Japan wouldn't be intimidated by an imperial title. In 1905, Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, expelling Russian influence from Korea. Weak and isolated, the Korean Empire couldn't escape annexation. In 1910, Japan announced the Japan-Korea Annexation Treaty, turning Korea into a colony. Thus began 35 years of humiliation for Koreans. From its 1392 founding to 1910 collapse, the Joseon Dynasty lasted 518 years. As a small East Asian state, its rulers showed remarkable survival wisdom. They leaned on Ming first, then Qing, securing centuries of relative peace through external alliances. The 20th century East Asian upheavals overwhelmed Joseon's capabilities, dooming it to a tragic demise. That concludes 500 Years of Haedong, Rising Fall of the Joseon Dynasty. Reading notes are below the audio. Until next time.